Hi from Fransboro. Hello. A question regarding your video game development. Really great project, by the way. I haven't even really started showing anything really yet, so hold your horses. Oh, will you paint some concept art for it? I'd be really interested to see that part of the job, if so. Yes, there will be probably a lot of concept art, including locations, main character, monsters. And I've been thinking a lot about it, like, should I, show everything on the channel? I think I should. It's not a problem. In terms of, like, spoiling things or anything, the main thing to spoil is really the story, not so much, the visuals of the monster or something like that. Plus, there will probably be more than what I get to show on the channel, because I need to work faster than I make videos anyway. I think I'll even show, like, sculpting process based on the concept, or maybe sometimes concept art would take place in a sculpting app, because it's just an easier approach depending on what the design is. Hi guys, my name is Borodante, and welcome to Boro reading comments about his future horror game development. As a general question, what are your goals with your horror game? A more specific one would be, do you plan to bring in more experienced developers later in the process to polish up the game? I don't plan to do that. It's a one-man project. It won't be a huge open world game, as well as it won't be hugely long. It will have different types of strong sides, which I really make sure I focus on those. So I don't think I'll necessarily need help in that regard. And the project will benefit a lot from, it being a simple undertaking, because I don't have to structurize and use some kind of management tools to plan what tasks need to be done and stuff like that. I can just sit down and work. Everything is in here. So it's a big deal, and especially to me, since I'm a big deal of an introvert, to me working with someone is a huge problem usually, so I tend to avoid doing that. Unless I'll be like maybe turning to small bits of help here and there for, a specific asset, or, well, like voice acting is a big problem. Like this one big problem I have, that no matter how much I can make a game on my own, I can't make voices. And my first bet on how to approach that would probably be Fever. So I looked up, there's quite a few of voice actors on Fever, so that could work. Probably. I'll have to look into it. But yeah, there's a lot of questions in that regard. My biggest issues in terms of the future development process are motion capture, like face and movement capture from actual acting. I would totally do it myself, but there's just no easy to use home tool that would be really affordable. Like I don't have money to spend at all in the scales that all the motion capture studios and, even companies that provide like AI tool that's just use one camera and it will solve anything. It's still like an annual subscription that's not exactly cheap anyway, so it's all not super accessible yet. Which was actually one of my big hopes, that it's already there, and it doesn't seem to be there, so that was kind of a bummer. But I know, so far I'll be developing whatever I can. Like, there's a lot of stuff before animation gets involved. Well, motion capture is really necessary for cutscenes. Cutscenes, when they're animated by hand, they don't have enough like real emotional content. You need actual actor performance capture for that. And in terms of like basic game mechanics, like running, jumping, and doing stuff like crouching, that you can really animate on your own. If you know what you're doing, it's not gonna be that bad at all. And in any case, you can replace it later if there's motion capture tech that shows up. So I'm thinking, like, with the whole VR explosion that may happen soon. It kind of started already. There's a lot of companies that release a lot of motion tracking tools that you place on your elbows, on your knees, on your feet, so it translates your movement into the VR game or VR chat. And a lot of the times those tools can be repurposed for actual motion capture. And that makes things a lot cheaper because generally that's from the consumer world of technology, so the price is a lot lower. Fingers crossed on that part. And yeah, another big thing that I really need to invest more time into figuring out is photogrammetry. Creating assets by making a lot of photos from different angles to just quickly bring geometry into the game and then optimizing it, cleaning it, but without having to measure and classically model every single object. That's not something an indie developer can really do, and I think most indie developers end up doing it, and that's like probably 90% of their budget, whatever they have, budget and time, and most of their small team. They just work on those assets, and then there's no animation, just different assets flying around. That's why indie games look like that. So I really want to avoid doing that, avoid just modeling a whole lot of assets that are just real world objects, you know? I'd rather, design and model something unique, like monsters or something creepy going on in the actual world, and not basic stuff like a chair or something. Of course, there's a lot of libraries available, but it's probably not gonna be exactly enough. We'll see. For now, what I'm excited about is that to develop a game, you can really start with just boxes, which is a great thing. The game is a fully real-time thing, so you can just use placeholders that are just boxes of different shapes for levels, for objects, any assets, and then you have the asset prepared later, then you click a button and it's replaced, and that's it. That's a good thing that I can first work on the mechanics, on making the actual game happen, and later I can add as much assets and solve as much problems with, filling it up with all this content later. What do you think it's an underrated piece of artwork or maybe even a series you've done on your channel? For example, I love your gentle and pale painting and most of your silent paintings. I realize it may be weird to talk about your own work as underrated or overrated, so maybe even from a creation standpoint, is there anything you wished had performed better sort of thing? Let me think about that. I don't particularly, keep a count in my head like, oh, this got what it deserved and this one didn't. Like, I don't have that kind of ego connected to artwork. I think it's super counterproductive to do that. So let me really scroll all the way. One might think that I would consider the one that is underrated to be the one that has like a very long process, like a lot of episodes dedicated to it, a lot of hours put into the actual painting. But that's not necessarily the case at all, because usually when I work on something for too long, I end up not liking the painting myself, because I don't know, with years of experience, you kind of figure out that if you're working on one image for that long, you're probably doing something wrong. And it really shows in the result. That's actually an interesting subject that I recently thought about. The application of painting as a form of art really changed in modern days. Not just because of, big production of games and movies where we use artists for not the final product, but for intermediate concept art and stuff like that. But also just because those mediums exist, like movies and games, and that's it. I know, movies and games. People stopped trying to show a huge amount of action inside of one painting. If you look at a lot of, classical traditional artwork from famous artists and everything, a lot of them tend to involve, a whole lot of action, a lot of people showing like a huge scene, like all these biblical stories, and you can read every portion of this image and seeing, oh, this happened and there, that happened. It's like you're watching a movie in one shot. Now, that used to be popular because there was no such thing as movies before. And now, if you wanna shove a huge amount of action into one shot, just make a movie. Like, that's what you should be doing. That's what you wanna be doing if you're trying to visualize so many action, It's not a popular medium to show so much action. A painting isn't. But again, I'm comparing videos, not paintings. I don't really have a place to evaluate the success of my paintings. Like Instagram, I don't even remember the last time I opened Instagram. So it's hard to tell, like, I'm not really an artist in my mind, meaning my ego is not specifically like I'm a painter. witness my paintings, the world. You know, I don't care about that. There's more things involved, especially now since I'm trying to be focused on a much bigger project of a game. You know what would be so damn cool? Seeing you start your own indie studio in 2022 and recruiting some talented people from your community. It does sound kind of unrealistic, but damn, that would be cool. Haha. Yeah, it is unrealistic. I would put it this way. Even my introvert not willing to waste energy on dealing with people and human factors and a whole lot of stuff, not to mention using a completely different type of tax payment model if you have people working for you. Even all that aside, I just don't have money to pay anyone for their work. Not even remotely close. It would probably be realistic if I would have another 0 at the end of my subscriber count. Then probably, yeah, I would be able to afford a team of at least 2-3 people. That would be already quite a thing. But even if I would have that now, like those resources, I would still not do it right now because for now I'm working on writing everything. I already developed the whole world, like the idea, the story. Now I'm working through specific characters and specific levels are still to be developed. And then probably to start actually working on something, since this is like my first project, I would probably choose one of the levels and make a demo inside of it. And that would be the beginning of the process. Because of course you have to have a 1-hour demo to have all the YouTubers playing it or something, you know? Are you going to make your game visually somewhat realistic like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, or are you taking a more artistic approach like The Little Nightmares or Limbo? Silent Hill, Resident Evil, of course. Like, it surely can be scary and make an actual horror with stylization, even in a third-person, first-person, like immersive kind of genre, but I guess I'm just not interested in that. I want to go more realistic, and especially considering that Unreal Engine provides quite a few cool tools like MetaHuman and Quixel Megascans, which is like MetaHuman is creating hyper-realistic characters that are ready for animation right into the game, and Megascans are a pretty huge library of photorealistic, not photorealistic, like literally photogrammetry created assets from reality, and there's quite a lot of them that I'll be using for environment. Very soon they'll introduce, they're already available in beta, actual trees, so you can create a realistic forest just by drag and dropping into the game and then tweaking settings to make them look exactly the way you want. And those things, they all look hyper realistic. So it's literally easier for me to go the realistic route, so all these free assets that are already done for me would fit in. So that's an interesting thing. Unreal Engine generally pushes for realism, so you better go for it yourself if you want as little friction and as much support as possible by the developers of the engine during your process. Question: will we get more of the big painting process videos like Eat Your Ass Jeremy or Judge Yourself Away? Those were always my favorite, even when they got complicated, like the infamous Black Widow. Haha. You know what, as I think about it, in the foreseeable future, I'm probably not gonna be working on these big paintings, and instead I'll be working on concept art for the game, for this whole world of it, which may become pretty complicated on its own, so kind of yes and no, in terms of I'm not planning to make specific big paintings that are like one-offs, but there will be a lot of artwork involved that will be applied to the real project, which I think is a lot more fun, but obviously is a bit of a different flavor of artwork and work. Are you disturbed by the horror creatures or concepts you create? Do you try to lean more into things you're afraid of or things you know other people find scary? Yeah, you know what? If you really want to dive into that question, I don't think I love horror for being specifically scary to me exactly. It is generally creepy and scary, obviously, but it's kind of more about it being dark and sort of graceful interpretation. So it's kind of more therapeutic than actually meant to scare you. Because what I think is really scary are humans, reality, war, murder, a stranger in your house, someone dear and close to you going insane, losing your child. You know, there's a lot of stuff, and most of these things that I described, they fit in a lot more not into horror, but into thriller. Horror involves supernatural aspect, which introduces this like frame for everything, like a veil on top that makes things entertaining scary, but doesn't reflect specifically onto your personal life. Like, you know, there's dark humor and stand-up comedians that make dark humor, but they don't necessarily would be touching like cancer or you know, some horrible things going on, like rape, maybe. Why? Because those things may actually happen to the people in the audience, and they won't find it funny. Same thing here. Horror is like a bit of a more tasteful thriller, because it makes sure it's keeping things not real, while slightly, a little bit in a very, you know, controlled manner, reflecting on realistic aspects here and there. Sometimes quite a lot. The line is not super defined between horror and thriller, but generally, you know, while an alien in a movie Alien, it does represent a stranger in your house in a way, but you know, you're not in a spaceship and you haven't seen any actual aliens, so there is a certain layer of distance between your personal real experience and what's going on in the story. So yeah, I don't think horror is about making you really afraid. It's more about entertaining your brain with feeling certain tension, atmosphere, or even jump scares, which are a much more obvious example of that. But even something that we consider, you know, a good horror where there's no jump scares, but it's really like eerie and scary, it's distant. It won't be about being hunted by neo-Nazis or something like that. That's not horror. That's a thriller or, I don't know, criminal genre. And those movies are usually a lot more upsetting and not exactly a favorite genre of most people. While a good example of something close to that but completely different would be one of my favorite movies, 28 Days Later, where there's a certain group of people but they're like zombies. You know, not a real thing, but representing a lot of something that's close to reality. And it puts certain people and groups of people that are close to each other into hard situations. They can be really depressing, but they're still distant because there's no zombies. It's an immediate pill to make yourself not go too much into a dark place from watching a horror story. That's why I like horror. It introduces this dark emotion and dark entertainment that's hard to find otherwise, you know, because all the companies and all the people, all the social media, everyone's happy and smiling all the time. But that's insane to always be only like that. We need the opposite side to experience as well. And of course, we don't want that to happen to us personally. So that's why we have horror, to let our brain experience dark emotions without it actually being bad to our lives. The better your life is, the more horror entertainment you need. That's my opinion. But yeah, as you asked, like, do I lean into things I'm afraid of or what other people find scary? I guess both. It's about, of course, like, I'm not interested in just making myself scared in terms of, like, you know, as I mentioned, careful and controlled addition of these hints, like references on the real world scary things. It would make little sense to create something that's like scary specifically to me. I feel like it would be like egotistic, stupid. Like, yeah, it would be stupid to do that. Like, I'm making a game for everyone to play, not just for me. What's the point of doing that? Of course, there will be a lot of personal touch, but mostly it will be about what I find to be cool and interesting to experience and to witness, to realize that things can go this way, like, whoa. That's really what I'm going for, like something exciting and unusual going on in the dark context. So yeah, I guess the main takeaway, the game will be for you to be afraid of. But that's an interesting subject. Like, you keep asking about what is specifically scary. I can't say that that's the most important thing about horror, specifically being scary. I feel like being fresh is a lot more important, because we've seen a lot of scary things that are just being recycled over and over again, and they're even scary over and over again, but okay. I'm not super interested in that. I would even say this way, like, I still have yet to, practice it and see how it really works as a game, like whenever I put at least a demo. But I feel like specifically the scary part, what really scares you in the end, is like details. It's details on the painting. What I'm a lot more focused on right now is the base of this painting, like the story, the mood, the style, the little interesting twists and nature of things. And then on top of that, making it scary, it really seems very easy and obvious how to, make anything creepy. What's important is that those details are applied on a unique, interesting, consistent world. Consistent enough, I mean. Things should be going insane sometimes, so, it's all about the balance, all about figuring out a lot of stuff before you end up actually scaring someone. But yeah, I keep actually asking myself this question a lot. Whenever I was writing the story, the world building aspect, I remember I write down the main idea, like a big chunk of text, and then it would be, but what's the horror part? And then I explain it to myself, like what kind of horror details it will lead to. So yeah, I have to think about that. But it's sort of that far-fetched horror aspect, something that you would be afraid of if you would be in that supernatural situation. Yeah, I'm not here to make you remember all the horrible, traumatizing experiences from your life, just to make sure you're as scared as possible. That's not the point. How do you feel about your oldest videos? I've seen most of your videos more than once, my overpaint episode maybe even 20 times. And I always think how you feel about many of them looking back, because many things changed since the first ones. Things like little edgy humor, many techniques you used through the years, running gags like the shower thoughts or the cursed series. They came and went away at one point, but is there any of these you rather miss, or any that you're not happy about now, years later? Oh yeah, that I'm definitely not happy about a lot of videos I made. The edgy humor, as you called it, very, very nice of you to call it that way, because the humor was very weird. Some videos are so cringe, like I can't watch some of my old videos. I start watching them like, ugh, and I just close it. I can't. But that's the thing, like, this is the history of me developing as a person in front of a camera. There's a lot of things to figure out when you do that. What works and what doesn't work and will never work. A lot of things to figure out when you start recording yourself. Oh man, so many of you guys congratulated me with New Year's and everything. Thank you all so much. Hope you all guys had a great holiday and will have a great year. How much planning are you doing for your game? Are you just creating as you go, or have you already planned out characters, the world, mechanics, story, etc.? Yeah, this is a subject I'll probably make a special video about later. It will be one of the first videos on the actual game development. But yeah, one thing I realized is that it's only planning for a while. I already did a lot of work and I haven't touched Unreal Engine in terms of I haven't even created the project of the actual game. I'm learning Unreal Engine in a whole bunch of different projects, but I haven't started making the game. It just makes zero sense to do that for now. So yeah, I guess that'll be it. Thank you all guys for your questions. Leave more questions under this video for the next video like this. Not necessarily at all about the game development, but this time it turned out to be all the upvoted questions are about that, so I guess this video is about game development questions. But yeah, make sure to ask more questions if you have any. And yeah, thank you all guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Did you play Resident Evil Village? Not yet. It's one of the very few Resident Evil games that I haven't played yet, and I'm gonna do that on my channel. That and maybe Resident Evil 3, because that's the other only game that I haven't played yet.